it. Hopefully you now can hear me. I have now plugged in the microphone, which for some reason was unplugged from the little terminal in which it normally sits. So hopefully you now got me online. Right, I'm not going to go back over the whole preamble to the show. You can read it there. As I said, it is show number 333. It is Sunday the 14th of May. It is a lovely looking day out there at the moment, and I do have quite a lot of news for you. So many apologies for that. I thought I double checked everything, but clearly not. Right, okay, so in the news this week, what have we got? What's the first story? Well, sadly, a pedestrian is in a critical condition and in a coma after she was hit by a police motorcycle in Earl's Court, West London. The special escort group were escorting the Duchess of Edinburgh through London on Wednesday at around 3:20 in the afternoon when the collision happened on the A4 Cromwell Road near its junction with Naverne Road. Paramedics from the London Ambulance Service and the London Air Ambulance both attended the scene. Helen Holland, who is 81, was reported to have been flung 40 feet by bystanders, and she remains in a coma. The Duchess of Edinburgh has said her heartfelt thoughts and prayers are with the woman. Buckingham Palace released a statement on Thursday saying that the Duchess was grateful for the swift response of the emergency services and will keep abreast of developments, but added that further comments would not be appropriate whilst an investigation is ongoing. The incident has been, of course, referred to the Independent Office for Police Conduct. Witnesses actually blamed the collision on a screen which had been put up for the coronation, which was blocking views of traffic at the junction. Another onlooker said that they believed that the motorcycle was not using flashing blue lights at the time, so no doubt there will be a very, very in-deep look at that particular crash. Right, we've got Clive, we've got Paul, we've got Sue, all looking in. Good to see you all. Thank you very much indeed for coming along once again, and hello to everybody else who's here too. Now, second news story isn't about another collision, but this time it's a hit and run motorcyclist. A 29-year-old woman was pushing a toddler in a pram when they were knocked down by a rider on a motorcycle. No details of the kind of bike or anything else that was involved, but it happened in Eltham Hill, which was in southeast London, shortly after 3 p.m. on Thursday, and the rider obviously failed to stop at the scene. Now, the 18-month-old child was treated at the scene by paramedics. Both were taken to hospital, but their injuries are not believed to be life-threatening. Not surprisingly, officers are, of course, appealing for witnesses, and anyone with information should come forward. Okay, so on with the news. What else have we got for you? That's not what I wanted to show you. Let's get the picture up. Yes, so I was fiddling around with trying to get the sound to work. Those are Honda's CRFs, probably the 300, I don't know, might be the older 250 if they've still got those in stock, but they have been supplied to West Midlands Police. There are 4 of them, it seems, altogether, and they will be used by police to catch offenders who either trying to escape by heading off-road, but also to engage with nuisance bikers. Now, the bikes will obviously allow the police team, the roads policing team, to patrol dirt areas, public parks, rough and uneven paths, and even wasteland, it says, in any weather. And the bikes will be operating in tandem with the drones team. So the bikes were actually purchased with the funding from seized from criminals under the Proceeds of Crimes Act, and they'll be used after numerous complaints of people riding off-road bikes dangerously and illegally. Now, a solution to this kind of problem that's been proposed many times and has actually been implemented in a number of different countries over the years, is to divert the energies of so-called nuisance bikers towards something more organised and perhaps a bit more useful. So in the Philippines, ShellAdvance, obviously the oil brand, they have recently launched a nationwide inside racing club wars powered by ShellAdvance, a series of events for motorcycle riders. And it's said to be, quote, a safe, less technical and beginner-friendly gymkhana event that provides casual riders with an opportunity to try their hand at motorbike competitions. The competition basically is open to small bike clubs with a minimum of 10 members. And there are various categories of race, including those for underbone, backbone and scooter riders. And what happens is the riders compete head-on, side by side on identical courses, and they use an electronic timing system to record results. And there's a prize kitty of over £1 million pesos. That's around £14,000 in UK money, plus scooters apparently as well to go to the winners. So it costs just 250 pesos to sign up per person, that's under £4, or you can enter for free if you've bought some ShellAdvance oil. And it's not just designed to attract competitors, there will also be rewards for visitors, discounts on oil products and raffle prizes from the ShellAdvance booth. Now the Club Wars series is happening nationwide across the Philippines until late in October, and it's in partnership with Inside Racing and the Racing Line, and it's being hosted, as I understand it, by local bike clubs from Luzon, Visayas and Mindanao. Alcambra from Inside Racing, he expressed his excitement to relaunch the partnership with ShellAdvance, saying, quote, ShellAdvance's participation in the Inside Racing Bike Festival is one way to engage grassroots biker communities in the country, and it's always exciting to work with a team that shares our passion for the motorcycle industry. We're looking forward to bringing more engaging events and activities for our riders and motorbike enthusiasts in the future, and with ShellAdvance's support we can make it happen. So that's an interesting approach to getting riders who may be causing trouble off the road and onto doing something a bit more useful. Now, something else going on in Singapore is the National Environment Agency. They announced on Tuesday that of the 27,000 eligible motorcycles, almost 90% of those have been deregistered or converted to a classic vehicle scheme or the revised vintage vehicle scheme. So what's all this about? Well, let's have a quick look at the picture if I can get that up. This is all about emissions and what happens to older vehicles. Now, back in April, the in-use emission standards for local motorcycles registered before 1st of July 2003 and for all foreign registered motorcycles were tightened, and the idea is that by clamping down on the older bikes we will be reducing vehicle emissions and improving air quality. Now, the riders have three options. They can continue to use their motorcycles so long as they've been modified to meet the tightened in-use emission standards. How easy that is, I do not know, but if they continue to use older unmodified machines they do face fines, and the NEA has apparently tested around 300 motorcycles for hydrocarbon and carbon monoxide emissions since enforcement started on the 6th of April. And the NEA says that enforcement actions were taken against 60 errant motorcyclists whose motorcycles did not meet the new standards for either or hydrocarbons and carbon monoxide. So that does suggest that actually quite a few have actually done something positive about the problem, because that means 240 basically passed the test. Now, alternatively to modifying the bike can be deregistered, which presumably means scrapped. And there was an incentive to encourage people to do that of up to $3,500 per bike. Now, in a statement on Tuesday, the 9th of May, the NEA said that 23,000 motorcyclists have actually taken up this incentive bonus and presumably deregistered their bikes. It has been on offer since 2018, so it's not sort of an overnight thing, but it clearly has worked. And around 1,000 motorcycles have been converted to the classic or revised vintage vehicle schemes. Now this is interesting because it means the older bikes can continue to be used without the modification, but only for a maximum 45 days per year. And I can't help but wonder, actually, hearing about that, if that wouldn't actually be a solution for the vehicles of older cars and bikes here in the UK, because we're being affected by the steady expansion of these ultra low emission zones, and many older vehicles simply don't meet the standards. But many drivers, of course, cannot actually afford to replace those vehicles because they only use them for occasional journeys. But obviously, you know, the ULEZ zone in London is expanding considerably, and my old camper, for example, which I probably don't use more than anything like 45 days a year, will be charged at a fairly hefty rate. So maybe something like this would actually be a solution for the UK too. I'd be interested in your views on that too. So Duncan's looked in from New Zealand. Good to see you there, Duncan. Hopefully be seeing Duncan very soon as he's visiting the UK. I'm looking forward to that. Now if you want to support Elevenses, you can pop over to my coffee page, and if you buy me a coffee over there generously, I will receive it gratefully. But it also opens up access to hundreds and hundreds of new better biking articles which I have written over the last few years. They're all archived over there. Well, not all of them, but their increasing numbers are archived. Every one of the almost every one of the Skills on Sunday, Tips on Tuesday series are up and over there, and I'm finally completing the 2001 year, which isn't up to date, but everything else from 2014 right up to the latest are over on Coffee, and you can find them over there and access dozens and dozens and dozens. So any bigger biking archive on the internet, I'd be surprised if you can find one. Let me know if you do, and I will try and beat it. Right, so on with the news. Now, another nation that's been rolling out some new rules for motorcycles is France, where there have been bans on older bikes accessing city centres, and also fairly hefty parking charges as well have been coming into force. Now, to move away from ICE bikes, the French government has previously rolled out substantial subsidies for electric motorcycles, but the push towards these greener and more active forms of mobility, such as cycling and walking, has increased the numbers of electric motorcycles being sold, but also decreased the number of ICE two-wheelers, and the figures so far are down 2.3% for ICE engined bikes. Some of the switch, as I say, has been to electric motorcycles, mopeds and scooters, but there's still not very many registered, only 1,377. It is an increase of 14% over the first quarter of 2023, but as you can see, there aren't that many on the roads in France yet. But here is the impact of the parking charges, and the largest French cities, Paris, Lyon and Marseille, every category of motorcycle has seen a decline in sales. In Paris, the first quarter sales of new electric P2Ws was actually down just over 10%, and that is being attributed to more expensive parking fees which affect all motorcycles, including electric bikes, and because of this switch to e-bikes and e-step scooters. Now, you'll probably know that I have spent quite a lot of time working with Biker Down over the years, and the story that I have for you is a fairly heartwarming one. Let me just get the picture up again. There we go. You'll know about Biker Down back in 2011, the winter thereof, and into the spring and summer of 2012 2012, I helped get the Biker Down project up and running in Kent. Initially, it was just a couple of pilot events, but we got enough funding from Kent Fire and Rescue to run the the course through to the end of the year. We're all volunteers, none of us got paid. I didn't even get expenses for turning up to these events for 10 years or so, but I also contributed the Science of Being Seen crash prevention module, and that complemented the accident scene management module written by James Sanderson down there, and the first aid module that was put together by Kent Fire and Rescue's paramedics. Now, we won a Prince Michael of Kent International Road Safety Award in 2012, and we got an insurance award, industry award the following year, which was nice. But thanks to the success of Biker Down in Kent, it began to be picked up by more and more of the fire services across the UK. Now, rather oddly, it was only actually recognised by the Fire Chiefs Association in 2020 when everything was locked down, and that year it was finally made a National Fire Service initiative, and a decision which incidentally led to my involvement with Kent Fire and Rescue being rather abruptly terminated. But anyway, hey ho. One of the things that the first aid module on Biker Down covered right from the off was the safe removal of a helmet if necessary to keep a fallen biker breathing. So it wasn't a case of just whipping helmet off willy-nilly, it was if the helmet was now life-threatening. So when we introduced that back at the beginning in Kent, it did get a lot of pushback from people who said that you should never remove a rider's helmet. And we heard everything from, gory stories from a mate who heard from a mate who heard from somebody else about a rider's brains coming out when the helmet was taken off, to worries, genuine worries about exacerbating spinal injuries. But the fact is, if the rider isn't breathing, they're not going to survive anyway. So anyway, the helmet removal technique isn't difficult. It was easy to demonstrate it to people who've never done it before, and within a few minutes they were able to remove a helmet without putting any trauma into the neck area. And of course it can be a lifesaver, just as one rider reported back to Biker Down Hertfordshire just days after taking his course. So this is what happened. This was just literally just a few days ago. The writer, who happened to be in his car at the time, was the first biker on the scene after a crash on the A405 at Bricket Wood. Now this is a busy link road. It connects the M25, the M1 with Watford, which is to the north of northwest London. Now, although there were other people already on the scene, he realised they had no idea what to do. One had called the emergency services, so he took control. And what he found was the rider was lying on his back, and according to his assessment, he was barely breathing. So with the help of a member of the public, he'd shown how to support the neck. What he did was release the helmet strap and remove the helmet. And at that point, quote, the casualty biker gasped for air and started breathing again, with the facial skin slowly regaining its nice pink reddish colour. Then he kept the rider stable until paramedics and other emergency services, including the air ambulance, arrived, and he concluded, I really want to thank the training team for the vital skills that you gave me. Please let's continue with this course and try to publicise the course extensively. Now absolutely I'm fully behind that, even though, as I said, I'm no longer directly connected with Biker Down. The Science of Being Seen material is still extensively used in the new Thinking Biker presentation, and I absolutely agree on the need to keep publicising Biker Down because it is life-saving stuff. And I'm still frankly disappointed about how many riders haven't heard of the course, and given the number that have actually gone through Biker Down now, Kent, we processed a number of thousands. I forget what the final figure was in 2020. Last time I heard, I believe it was well over 3,000 people. It's a bit disappointing that they haven't passed the word on to other people. And the thing is, it costs nothing. It's free. It just costs you time. So, as the writer of the letter, who wasn't actually named, sort of point out, you could end up saving a life. So Right, okay. Kevin's looked in as well. Good morning, Kevin. Interesting comment there. I'll come back to that though. So where were we? Well, bikes. Let's have a quick look at a motorcycle. Now, you probably guessed there's been relatively little development of new ICE bikes from the main manufacturers. And that's because, of course, many countries, Europe being prime example, are now looking to a future which doesn't include petrol. And the bikes that are appearing are largely retreads of older designs or bikes that were clearly in development when the news broke, like the new Hornet and the new Suzuki 800s. So about the only real exception to this are the Chinese motorcycle manufacturers who seem ready to plug the gap. Royal Enfield are also, of course, doing their best with their bikes. But one of the big Chinese brands is Lonsin. They're a company which has a tie-up with the Italian brand MV Agusta. But they also have their own premium spin-off brand, Voge. And that brand is sold outside China and the neighbouring Asian countries in which Lonsin markets their bikes. Now, specifically, Voge's bikes have been streamlined for the European market. They have 125A1 models for beginners, and they have 35 kilowatt 500cc bikes which are aimed directly at A2 license holders. Now, in previous shows I've actually mentioned the Voge DS500 and how it was running an engine which was nearly identical to the CB500 Hondas, a 471 parallel twin engine, but it now seems that Lonsin's engineers have uprated the engine by taking the capacity out to 494 cc's, and the result is modestly improved performance. Now, in its native form, the non-EU model produces 53 horsepower, which is a bump up over the Honda. Although it is almost certain that the EU model will be restricted to 47 horsepower to stay within the A2 category, but the torque gets a boost of over 10% from the Honda or the original 500 Voge. It's up to 35 pounds-feet or 47 Newton meters, so that should give the bike some distinctly improved acceleration. Now, just to have a quick look at the machine here, this is the DS525X with the spoked wheels. There is also a DS525 variant. They're both expected to make their way to Europe this autumn. As you can see, they're both it's an adventure touring bike. Both of the DS machines are adventure touring. They get a road-oriented 19-inch front, 17-inch rear wheel, and the DS 525X, the version shown here, is getting tubeless wire spoke wheels rather than cast wheels. Oh why can't other manufacturers switch to tubeless spoked wheels when they fit spoke wheels to their machines? I simply do not know the answer to that. Relatively few of us are going to be taking the bike off-road and needing to change tubes on the go. The bikes both get KYB suspension at both ends. It's fully adjustable as well, so fairly up-spec'd. Now, also, which is fairly remarkable, is assuming that the figures are accurate, the Voge DS525 actually weighs 1 kilo less than the already lightweight Honda CB500X. It's 198 kilograms, 437 pounds. With the optional aluminium side cases that you can see here, the bike still only tips the scales at 216 kilograms, so not heavy at all. Price for the Voge 500 DS, the cast wheel model, that currently costs £5,400 plus the usual on the road charges through Voge's distributor in the UK, which makes it around £1,300 cheaper than Honda's CB500X. It will be interesting to see actually how much the importer hikes the new model's price and how much that eats into the 500's attractive price point. Right, okay, finally today's discussion point. And this is quite an interesting case, and which got me thinking, because the question it really poses us is how much can we trust the sort of the no-name bike manufacturers behind some electric startups to build bikes that are actually safe for the road. Now, if you've been following the development of electric motorcycles and scooters, you'll be just as aware as I am that the vast majority of these bikes are being built by unknown companies, and that many of these are actually small startups. We're only just starting to see scooters and mopeds from the likes of Honda and Yamaha appear for sale. So I've often wondered just how much expertise the startups actually have in the design and construction of powered two-wheelers. So it's not just powertrains that need development. There's the chassis and running gear too. And now, obviously, being a startup doesn't mean that they can't do the job to a decent standard. And you have, I would suggest, Zero Motorcycles as a prime example of a company that was once upon a time a small startup, but has actually progressed to the point where they have a motorcycle which can stand comparison with any motorcycle, I would say, that you're going to find made by a major manufacturer. But what about all the numerous little startups, particularly the ones who are running crowdfunding? Now, back in November, I mentioned the Marbella-based Spanish manufacturer Urbet, who showed off 2 new electric motorcycles at the Milan Motorcycle Show in November in Italy. Now, the company's been around for a while. It was founded in 2016. It says it's dedicated to smart and environmentally friendly urban mobility solutions, and the company donates 1% of its profits to a foundation which actually invests in solutions for air pollution. Now, Urbet have already offered a series of small motorcycles, e-bikes, and this is the Laura. This was said to be available in 2 versions, a standard 125 equivalent with a peak power of around 11 kilowatts, giving a claimed top speed of 75 miles per hour and a maximum range of 112 miles from a 7.56 kilowatt hour battery. There was an upgraded version to this too, with a 19 kilowatt motor that takes top speed to about 93 miles an hour, and that gets twice the battery capacity and is also said to double the possible range, although obviously if you're going to be using the full power you'll get considerably less than the range claimed. Now, the manufacturer said that Urbet was expanding on the international market, and their bikes were set to go on sale in Spain, Germany, Portugal and the United Arab Emirates by the end of last year. And this particular bike wasn't exactly that cheap either. It was starting around £10,000, but not everything that Urbet makes is quite so pricey. So this, for example, is the Urbet Gadiro. Now, this is a machine which produces just 3 kilowatts. That's said to be enough for fairly optimistic sounding 56 miles per hour in its de-restricted form, so in other words a non-moped, and it can go a maximum of 75 miles thanks to 2 swappable 32 amp hour batteries. Now, it's a budget price. It's €2,300 for the single battery version, 2,900 for the twin batteries, and the machine weighs in at just 108 kilos, 238 pounds, so it's very light indeed. Now, to look at the machine, it's fairly standard of the kind of small bikes that we're starting to see making an inroad into the small commuter market. So I have to say, I was pretty shocked to see a Spanish rider posting on my regular bike forum about his less than happy experience with the Urbet Gadiro. And to quote from the post, what he said was, in August 2022, I bought a used Urbet Gadiro electric motorcycle when it was 2 years old and had 1,500 kilometers on the clock. After a month of riding it, the chassis broke in half and almost killed me. As I suspected that my accident had been due to a manufacturing defect, I posted a video on YouTube explaining the case, and you can actually check out the video. It's here. In the comments on the video, Urbet apparently acknowledged that 32 of their first motorcycles came out with a chassis, quote, suspected of having some weakness, unquote, and that they've been aware of this situation since one of the motorcycles broke in half in December 2020, causing another accident. They've confirmed that several of these models have been exported outside Spain, and the writer says be extremely careful. So what actually happened to the bike? Well, let's have a look at some screenshots. I'm going to run these through for you in sequence. Right, so as you can see, the fork assembly is actually snapped off clean at the headstock. Now, I have seen, I will be fair, I will be honest, I have seen a Kawasaki do exactly that in a video, but it happened as the rider landed the bike from a wheelie. He'd been stunting the bike backwards and forwards across the car park. Presumably, he'd been doing that on a fairly regular basis, and I suspect as it landed from the near vertical wheelie, that was enough to do for the front end on that machine. So we do have to be a little bit careful, but you know, it does seem from the Urbet's admission that they have problems with other bikes with the chassis issue, suggesting it's not down to abuse by the rider. So that is pretty shocking. Let's have a quick look at the welding standard. Well, here it is. I would say that's pretty damned awful, actually, and to be honest, if I had seen that on a bike, I think I would be walking away from it. Another owner replied on the video that he'd had a footrest break off, and it seems he was still waiting to hear if his bike was one of those with a weak chassis. Now, Urbet's website, they claim that electric motorcycles have fewer moving parts compared with conventional ICE motorcycles, and that basically, they say, reduces the need for maintenance and visits to the workshop. But that's all very well if you haven't built a chassis on which to hang that electric powertrain, which falls apart. Steel tube frames aren't exactly the latest hot poop technology. You know, we've been welding steel for well over a century, so it's pretty dire if something falls apart or when footrests snap off. So you might be wondering whether Urbet actually build their own motorcycles, and the answer to this is no. I did a bit of digging and I found this. It's the Rotom Ray. Now, Rotom Ray, it looks like to be visually identical to the Urbet. So who are Rotom? Well, it turns out, perhaps not surprisingly, that they are a Chinese builder of lightweight electric motorcycles and scooters who are, according to the website, committed to build the world's leading intelligent high-performance electric motorcycles and scooters. Perhaps not surprisingly, Rotom also turn up on Alibaba, the Chinese website. But perhaps rather more surprisingly is in their store on Alibaba, you not only see the motorcycles with the Rotom brand, as you can see there in the bottom of these two photos. They were snipped from exactly the same page, and then if you go up and look at the motorcycle, you'll see the Urbet logo on the tank. So there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that Rotom are responsible for this particular motorcycle. Just how independent Urbet are from Rotom, I honestly don't know. But as you can see, their publicity branding shows them side by side. So there we go. I'd be interested, obviously, in your comments on this. If anybody does have an Urbet motorcycle tucked away in their garage, I'd be very interested to hear what you have to say about it. I suspect it's a bit of a long shot, but yeah, just let me know what you think. As I say, I'm always interested to hear what people have to say about these items I do at the end of the show. Right, that is actually all for today. Thank you once more for looking in. It looks like it's a lovely day out there today, so if you are out on the roads on your bike, and why not after all, do stay shiny side up.